Wait, did you press it?
I pressed it. Yeah, I pressed the button.
All right, you can edit out. You can edit this out anyway.
No, leave it in, leave it in. Everything's good. I pressed the button. The bomb has gone off. It's flying over Ireland as we speak. Yeah, that's what it'd be like. That's what it'd be like. You'd have Biden in the White House, wouldn't you? He'd be scratching his balls and he'd end up fucking pressing a button or something, I'd imagine.
In a Les Nielsen type character, yeah.
Yeah, Star Wars 3. Yeah.
I was going to say he'd accidentally, you know the way he speaks gibberish. It would actually mean something in Russian, like we're going to blow you to smithereens.
Yeah. Okay, so I probably should introduce this. And I'm the presenter. Am I? Yeah. I thought I was just going to drink some beer and you were going to do all the hard work. What the hell?
Well, if you want, we can. I give the final address or something like that. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I was gonna like. I'm after having about 2 beers, so don't worry, I'm not that bad. I was struggling with the word apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's not one for late in the night, you know.
I was thinking if I have 5 beers now, it would be a good test to say that 3 times. Apocalyptic. No, not too bad. So I'm with the German Pointer, aka Betwixt. So thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure. I felt it was urgent that we have a look at this movie because anything can happen in the world in the next few days or weeks. So it's better to get this movie review out of the way before the shit hits the fan, maybe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, the funny thing is, we planned to talk about this film about almost a year ago. And now it seems even more relevant.
Yeah. So we were ahead of our time. We were just too lazy to get it out, or I was anyway. So we're talking about the movie Threads. It's an apocalyptic war drama. It was made for television and it was put out into BBC in 1984. I hadn't seen it at the time. Well, I was probably only a few years old. But did you see it at the time? I mean, I'd say you're more or less the same age as me, so.
Yeah, I don't remember anything about this film. I don't remember anything about it at all. And it was you who put me onto it there last year, around Christmas time. Yeah. And I think you said to me that it scared the hell out of a lot of people when it came out. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, so it's written by Barry Hines, and you know Barry Hines is best known for the novel A Kestrel for a Knave, which was a classic movie in itself. Kes. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
I haven't. No, I haven't.
Oh man, that's if you think Threads is depressing, Jesus. It's a very That's probably the most depressing movie you'll ever see in your life. So yeah, so it's a kind of, he wrote this and he's famous for that movie as well. It was directed by Mick Jackson, whose other famous work is Bodyguards with Kevin Costner, which is a little bit different to this movie, I think. I've never seen that movie, so I can't say. But the movie's about, it's a dramatic account of nuclear war, its effects in Britain, specifically on the city of Sheffield in northern England. Sheffield is famous for its steelworks, of course. And it centres on 2 families, the Becketts and the Kemps, as they go about their daily lives. And at the same time, there's a confrontation building up between the United States and Soviet Russia over Iran. So it's a little bit similar today, where we've Ukraine and it's like a proxy war between Russia and America. So it's very similar, the plot, and it's similar is because people are going about their daily lives, and a lot of people don't realize how serious it is at the moment. So that's why I was saying we should do this movie. I would strongly recommend people have a look at it and think where we are today. I think it's still relevant.
Yeah, I'd just like to say as well, there's a quote from the narrator at the very beginning, and I'll try and do the suave British accent. He says something like, "In an urban society, everything connects. Each person's needs are fed by the skills of many others. Our lives are woven together in a fabric, but the connections that make society strong also make it vulnerable. I thought that was very well written, the opening statement.
Yeah, I mean it does. It's relevant when you see the whole movie that we're all connected, in different layers. It was shot on a budget of 400,000. I mean, it's not. There's no. I mean, there's not so much special effects really. It's more the storyline that keeps it going, and it's like a kitchen sink style drama that the Brits, of course, do so very well. And when I say kitchen sink, so what I was thinking about the movie, introducing the movie, I was thinking of the Brits can do these kind of dramas, gritty kitchen sink dramas so well because they have that industrial base, working class base, and I was thinking like of other movies like Thisdrinkinglife, and as I said, Kes and Scum and ID, and even the modern ones, Dead Man's Shoes and This Is England. And I actually had written Jimmy McGovern's Cracker, and I just got the news that Robbie Coltrane has just died. So that was kind of strange. But yeah, it's that kind of thing. I think only the English can do this kind of movie, really. I think if the Americans made this kind of movie, it'd be a very different movie. It'd be some kind of superhero comes in the end and saves the day at the last minute or something.
Yeah, I don't think they would go in for the pessimistic outlook. Like from beginning to end. I don't think they would. And yeah, the colors as well. It's pretty dull looking at it, even though it's in color. It looks, everything looks ashen even before the strikes, the nuclear strikes.
Yeah, well, it's typical, as I said, kitchen sink British drama. You have the wastelands and the smoke bellowing out of some factory, and it's always dark and depressing. I wonder what we were doing in the 80s in Ireland. What was Ireland like? We had no factories, so
yeah, we wouldn't have had as much pollution as the Brits, that's for sure.
Yeah. So I guess the central plot is, as I said, you have two families, the Kemps and the Becketts, and the story is that Ruth Beckett is going out with Jimmy Kemp, and they plan to marry. After learning that Ruth got up the duff, she unplanned pregnancy, and so it revolves around this storyline and how they're going about their life. They're planning their future. They're moving in together. They're after getting a place to stay. And at the so as this is going on, every day you have in the news the situation in Iran is getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So you'll have radio broadcasts talking about the situation in Iran as the people in Sheffield go about in general blissful ignorance to what's happening politically.
I'd just say as well, Thisdrinkinglife, the opening scene of Jimmy and Ruth, they're in the car and they're up, I don't know, they're atop some hill, but the way the car is parked, it's kind of hanging over, I don't know what, like it's kind of on a headland or something. So it looks like it's in a precarious position. And funnily enough, she says to Jimmy that she'd like to live out in the countryside. Somewhat prophetic,
Yeah. Well, the whole idea of that they have an unplanned pregnancy and it changes their life, and then you have the whole idea of an unplanned war. I don't know if that's a theme, maybe, but or are these things unplanned, these wars? But I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say as well that the theme around abortion, like it seems quite liberal. I can imagine in Ireland that wouldn't have been really up for discussion.
Yeah.
Like the family more or less openly discuss it. The Kemps, at the dinner table.
Yeah. Yeah. I can't remember that part, actually. As we said, we talked about this movie a year ago, so did you look at it again, did you?
I did, because I'd forgotten a lot of it. Yeah, I'd forgotten a lot of it. You're going to be found out now.
I'll edit that part out, don't worry. Yes, you're right. Yes, I'll just pretend. Yeah, very good. Yeah, that was an amazing scene, wasn't it? Yeah.
The power of editing.
Yeah, but it is funny that there is a class thing with the Becketts and the Kemps. The Kemps are obviously working class, and the Becketts are a little bit lower middle class. You know, they have that bigger house, and it's on this. I think it's in the suburbs, but they are actually listening to the news. The father of the house, anyway, and so I mean, it's interesting that how they are beginning to prepare for this nuclear Armageddon that they're threatening on the news, and so there is a difference in how maybe, you know, like ordinary people, they don't really take notice too much of world events, or at least listen to the news and listen to their politicians.
Yeah, the working class, like obviously they're busy working, and when they're not working, they're in the pub.
Yeah.
So they're completely oblivious to what's coming. You know, they're completely oblivious, and I'm sure like they'd say, "Oh, it'll never happen. It'll never happen." But I was going to say as well, there's a scene, they use it a few times. Someone has zebra finches. I think they're zebra finches. And you can see these birds in a cage, and they look panic stricken. They're kind of fluttering about. And this is long before the Armageddon, you know. And there is this idea, you know, that animals can predict when something bad is going to happen, and they get out of dodge. And you know, if there's a forest fire or something like that, they seem to be aware of it before it happens. And you can see these zebra finches; they're very, very nervous. And they showed the scene of the zebra finches a number of times, just to get across the idea that, you know, the non-human characters know what's going on, whereas everyone else is kind of, you know, second guessing or just completely oblivious, like most of the working class.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, they do show the birds. I mean, there is the scene. There's a sad scene later on, and maybe we'll touch on it, with the young boy with the birds when he doesn't know what to do. He's seen his family wiped out, and the only thing is he can go in and the only thing he can do is just go in and sit with the birds and cry. You know. At least I think that was a scene. Can you remember that one?
I can't, but I might have nodded off. I might have nodded off in parts of this film, I have to say. Not because I was bored, just because I watched it very late, you know.
Jeez, that better be in the movie. Yeah. I'm sorry, this is my first movie review, so go easy on me. But
I was going to say, you're giving away the script you're working on, you know, for the second Threads film.
Yeah, it'll be set in the bog in the middle of Ireland that I'd be turning turf one day. And we say, what was that?
in that case, you'd have your arms out for the nuclear bomb. You'd be dying to get out of that horrible labour.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I have to give I have to say that it is. You know, I'm in Vietnam at the moment. I don't know if you know that, but
yeah, I've seen your last few videos. They're all from Vietnam, but yeah. I don't know. I didn't know if they were new ones or old ones that you'd put up.
Yeah, I do kind of mix them up a bit, but yeah, it's the middle of the night here, and it was a long week of work, so that's in my defense. Okay, so that's the basic story. It's two couples. They're planning their future together. Unplanned pregnancy. Both parents don't mind. The couple love each other, and they're planning on moving into a new home together, and they're all excited. They're doing DIY in the house, and it's in that terms of the movie. It's a happy movie. It's a lovely setting. It's a lovely story there, but at the same time, escalations are going on in Iran, and the Americans and the Russians are beginning to go all out crazy in the world with nuclear weapons. So that's the basic storyline. But of course, the movie centers on, it's kind of like done in 3 steps. It's the before, during, when the bomb is dropped, what happens in the immediate, and then there's the after effects many years later. So let me see, just touching on some themes then. Do you think that it shows the effects of a nuclear war? Is it realistic in that regard?
I don't know, to be honest. From what we were told as kids, it seemed to tick all the boxes, you know. This thing about the fallout being, you know, if you're not incinerated, then the fallout will get you within, you know, a few days or whatever. And, you know, people coughing up blood. A lot of people in their houses, and I think what was it, the the British government told them that if there's a dead body, leave it with you, but if it starts stinking up the place, then leave it outside your door. And
Yeah.
they weren't going to bother with mass burials because they didn't have the diesel or whatever for the machines. So there was already, like, very quickly the supply chain broke down.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that happening. I can imagine that being very realistic. We take it for granted. Like, for example, I was in the supermarket today, and I wasn't thinking, this could be my last time in the supermarket, But if something like that did happen, like, everything will within a day, maybe even less, you'll have people rioting and trying to get food, breaking into each other's houses.
Yeah. Well, they had that scene, wasn't it? There was fighting in the supermarket and stuff, and yeah, I mean. So wait a minute though. I was told I seen the videos that you have to hide under your desk and your table. Is that not, in school isn't that what the Americans were taught?
Yeah. And would you believe it? Seemingly, it doesn't stop you being incinerated. It's very, very strange.
But remember we got the iodine tablets. Would they not do anything, or how did they work? I have no idea.
Yeah, we'll just have to wait for the science to come out once again and tell us. But it's quite catastrophic. Pardon. Sorry, I'm not drinking. It's quite catastrophic.
Apocalyptic.
The cat got my tongue with catastrophic. So it's a horrible scene. It's a really horrible scene, and. As we said there at the very start, like it looks quite depressing anyway. Sheffield, it looks quite depressing.
It could do with a nuclear bomb wiping it out. Yeah. Yeah.
It is quite depressing, as you said. It's an industrial city. I guess this have been the time of Maggie Thatcher as well. Like, it was 1984.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, it's just a horrible, horrible scene in general. And you mentioned that Jimmy and Ruth are, they've rented out this house and they're trying to do it up. And if you remember, he goes out with some mates to the pub.
Yeah.
And he was told, you've got a woman to look after now. You've a kid on the way. But he seemed pretty relaxed about that. He started drinking and. He went with his friend and chatted up some girl. I think it shows him with the girl as well.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know what happens with him. Does he just never? No, he does make it back to Ruth, does he?
No, he doesn't. Remember he was in the bomb went off and he was working and he's in his van and I think he crashes the van and that's it. You don't see anything else about it after that.
Okay.
Which it leaves it open, like we don't know what happened, but you can figure he probably died or something,
Right.
There was a van crashed, so she's on her own. We should add that Jimmy dies or he's gone when the bomb hits. And the reason the reason Sheffield was important because I think there was an RAF base near Sheffield. So it would have been, if there was anything like a nuclear attack, it would have one of the rockets would have hit Sheffield because it's near a big RAF Royal Air Force base. So that's why that would have been targeted. So yeah, when it hits, I mean, it totally changes the direction of the movie. So this is serious now. There's a nuclear bomb attack and Jimmy doesn't make it home. Some of his family, well, I think. Most of his family die, except the mother and the father, but they're badly wounded. And the Becketts survive for a while in their basement. But Ruth is on her own. She doesn't have her man, so she's worried. She's worried about Jimmy. And that's the central part of the movie. It's the immediate after effect and in the next few weeks. So, yeah, so that's what we're like, this movie was made in the 80s, and in the 80s, people generally, like, compared to today, we had our heads screwed on. I mean, with the Generation X, I couldn't see, especially the younger generation, I can't see how they can't. How would they survive even without the internet or TikTok? I mean,
You mean Generation Z, yeah?
Generation Z, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. All right. I was just
I don't know.
wondering, I was just wondering. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how they would, I think they probably wouldn't even know. Even if they were told that missiles were on the way, they'd probably still be, on Instagram and
Meh. Yeah, they
you
wouldn't care.
they just
Yeah,
shrug their shoulders and say, "Yeah, so what?"
yeah,
I was going to say as well that Ruth, she escapes, doesn't she? Because she's with her parents in the basement and she won't eat. And she says she wants the baby to die. And then when they're putting out a dead body, she manages to escape. And that's when she goes out into the wilderness and she befriends some other stragglers. And I think there's a scene where they eat a dead sheep.
yeah,
Do you remember that?
yeah. I mean, there's a few scenes now when she's in that ragtag group of people. I mean, yeah. So she branches out on her own. I think it's because her parents, yeah, she went out for didn't she go out for some food and then she returned and the house was the parents were in the basement and they were robbed and attacked and left for dead. They died. Someone attacked them for food or something, and so people will do anything for food. They'll kill, So her parents were dead, so she couldn't. The room was rotting, no doubt. So she decided to join up with people wandering around looking for food. Yeah. So, I mean, there's the other question then that raises is that her family did some preparation. They had a basement. They stocked it with food. There was a little bit of preparation, whereas Jimmy's family did very little preparation. They basically did it the day the bombs went off. Basically, they just put a door against. I don't know what was it. They put a door against a wall or something and hid under the door. That was their basic preparation for a nuclear war. But that's the question of prepping. People are big into prepping. So, I mean, what do you think about? Should we be preparing for this, or is it just a complete waste of time? Because in the movie, it's a complete waste of time.
Well, it was a complete waste of time for all those people in the 1980s who were prepping, because there was no nuclear attack in Britain or Western Europe or North America. But it's funny because when I was watching it, I was thinking, it's a matter of should I stay or should I go? And there is a family, they decide to go for, to head for the hills straight away. I don't know who they are, but they have a kid and a dog, and
they're in the
car, dog is missing, and the father's like, "Come on, we've got to go." And then the dog eventually jumps into the back seat, But I think they get blown to smithereens, don't they? They end up at a roadblock.
Yeah, stuck in a roadblock for the whole nuclear war.
Yeah, there's like a million other people with the exact same idea. Let's drive. Let's get into the car.
Yeah. So they're actually in worse condition.
They're completely exposed. Yeah.
Oh, could you imagine you're in the middle of the fucking thing? Oh, bollocks, I made a terrible mistake.
And then you have the kid in the back seat saying, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" But the father's a really gruff character as well. He's like one of those no nonsense working class fathers.
Yeah.
And you can imagine how he feels when he gets to this fucking roadblock, and he's told to turn back. What does he do?
Oh yeah. So I mean, I think people living in the countryside would have an advantage to the people in the towns and cities, wouldn't they?
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, they might have a few sheds and to be able to bury stuff, whatever. Yeah. Access to water beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. I think slightly. Yeah. But I mean, but then the question: can you prepare for a nuclear war? I mean, how do you prepare for a nuclear war? I mean, we said with iodine tablets, but seriously, how do you prepare? Can't really, can you?
I don't think so, unless those bunkers work. The ones with the walls of lead.
Yeah, Switzerland, we had one. We had a nuclear bunker. I should have took a video of that. It would have been interesting, maybe. But, yeah, in Switzerland they all have them. The old houses, not the new ones. But I think it was by law you had to have a bunker if you were building a house up to the 1980s or something. But then you survive. I mean, what do you survive to? I mean,
But here's the question: this drinking life, you know, how long does it last afterwards? You know, the whole fallout thing. Like, because I don't really know. You know, obviously, you know, we hear about what happened in Chernobyl, and people say that you can't, you can't still live in that zone. Whatever. How long is it? Almost 40 years later,
yeah,
you can't live in the zone. But yet they said within a very short period of time, you know, foxes were back, badgers were back,
yeah,
birds were back. So I just wonder about all that. And then, you know, the only cities that we heard was Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And some people say they were atomic bombs, not nuclear weapons. I don't know. But,
yeah.
you know, those cities were built back up straight away, and they're heavily populated. So I just wonder about the whole aftermath thing. How long does it really last?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, because in the movie it lasts years, doesn't it? I mean, you have the radiation and the heat, but then later actually it blocks out the sun, so you have a winter, don't you? A nuclear winter. So you have the two extremes, and it just kills all the crops. But you're right. I mean, does it really happen like that? And I'd also wondered, because a lot of these nuclear weapons, they've never been really, they've never been used, of course, a lot of them, and they've been there for years. I wonder, are they still really functional? I mean, that reminds me of the story. Didn't the British do a nuclear test and didn't it go off haywire, didn't it? Do you remember that was a story a few years ago? It was done, I think it was done in the Pacific or somewhere, and they couldn't control it or something, and it went, you know. So I'm wondering about some of these Russian nuclear weapons, like where could they end up?
Yeah.
You know?
I know that France was testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific, so it could have been them. And like some people will even say, now, I don't know about this, but some people will even say that there's no such thing. It's just a kind of boogeyman to make sure everyone gets into line. And that what happened to the Japanese cities was that they were firebombed. I don't know. I can't really say. But if there are nuclear weapons, even like the ones we saw in that film, there's not really a lot you can do. And it looks like you're better off to stay put if you do have a basement.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, but then didn't that what the family did, and they were attacked in their own home by people looking for food.
Yeah.
I think they noticed Root going into the house. I think as far as I remember, I think that's how they clicked. Someone was in the house. I think they might have spotted her going into the house or leaving the house, one or the other. I think that's how they spotted it. I'm just after finding it. I'm sorry, I'm just after finding it. Yeah, in 2000 and I think it's 2016 test. A British newspaper alleged that an unarmed nuclear missile veered off course and headed towards the USA in a 2016 test by the British. Yeah, well, that's the Brits for you, you know. Fucking hell.
I was going to say that I once met a woman. She was an elderly woman from the States, and when she was a little girl, I think her father was involved in the military, and they were testing nuclear weapons in the desert in New Mexico. And she was at the window. She says it's one of her early memories. She was standing at the window looking at these very small mushroom clouds.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the film The Hills Have Eyes.
No.
All right. It's one of those kind of Texas Chainsaw Massacre type films. But the idea is that due to radiation poisoning, some of the locals turned into complete monsters, and they started killing tourists and things like that. But anyway, yeah.
Funny, yeah. Yeah, so that could be a side effect, is it?
We're getting a little bit off course here, like that British test, you know.
Boom. Yes. Should we be really of course we should be worried, but are the effects as dangerous as they say? Do they have this arsenal? Is it real? Of course, some people say aliens will come down and stop it all. Isn't that what some conspiracy? I've seen some of those things on the internet. Have you seen those stories? The aliens will come down and stop it all.
I haven't, but I read a book a few months ago, and it was that idea that, you know, aliens would interfere before we wiped each other out.
I think they'd be quite happy to see us wipe each other out. I think if there was aliens, wouldn't they?
I wouldn't be that pessimistic now. Come on.
Well, this movie is very pessimistic, so it gives you that mood. There's the political aspect to the movie. We do see some politicians in a bunker, doing what politicians do best, being busy doing nothing, ringing and organizing, oblivious to what's happening in the outside world. And they go on with this for a while. So it shows even in the event. But the government do have some they do have like regulations, don't they? They bring out the army onto the streets. They try to take control of the country because the country's going to pot. Try to restore order. They've given orders to shoot and kill if people are riotous. So there is the political element to it as well.
Yeah, I was thinking as well, that the Brits generally, the British government, they would be very good in that sort of situation where they would, like I can just imagine, the present Irish government just dissolving straight away, and all these homosexual leaders running into the forest or something. I can just imagine this, but the stiff upper lip of the Brits, they really like having the idea of government and control. And even when the chips are down, they're like, right, we'll divide it up into regions. And as you said, we'll get the army involved. And actually, when I was watching it the other night, I was thinking of you, because I remember the last time we spoke, you said you were kind of the political persuasion, don't tread on me. Yeah. And if you remember in this film, the government starts sending, and it's kind of relevant to what's happening today, actually. The government starts sending people, homeless people, to houses out in the countryside. And there's a guy there, and he tries to block, the police or whatever, and these homeless people from entering his house. And he's told, no, you have to take them. You have to take them. And he's he's saying something like, I don't even know if they're bloody contaminated or not. And they're kind of pushed in his door nonetheless. So this thing of private property goes out the window straight away when there's an emergency.
Yeah. Well, good point. Yeah. I mean, there's so many things in this movie that there's so many talking points that are still relevant today. Yeah. I mean, geez, what would the Irish government do? I mean, Jesus, could you imagine? We would probably just beg the Brits to help us, because if there was a nuclear attack in Ireland and in England, we'd be fucked too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Are we even a neutral country?
Yeah,
that's another thing.
But it makes with the Russian thing in Ukraine. Remember when all the Irish media were snaring the Russian TV show? Remember the Russian TV show that had Ireland wiped out as well as England? They did a mock nuclear attack on England just to say, hey, look, we only need one bomb to wipe you out. And it also included Ireland being wiped out. And all the D4 heads and Coveney and all were just like snaring the Russian TV show. Oh, but we're independent. As if saying that would protect Ireland if it got hit,
Exactly. Yeah, their heads are in the clouds, yeah. It's we're not very far away from Britain either. We're not very far away at all.
But sure, Sheffield is what, near Dundalk or something, is it? Across the Irish Sea, isn't it?
Yeah, I was going to say as well. I just see here on a website that it says the personal world of two British families in Sheffield, and then it has in brackets site of a major NATO installation.
Yeah. So anywhere that's beside a NATO installation in the next few months should be getting very worried, perhaps.
Yeah. Shannon Airport, for example.
Yeah. So I basically think Ireland is fucked if there was, and they attacked England. There's nothing. You'd imagine maybe that there would be a tidal wave or something. Maybe that would wipe out Dublin or something, wouldn't it? I guess. Maybe.
Yeah, it's hard to know, but as you said as well, like the sky would be full of dust for a long time, and we don't tend to get a lot of sunshine anyway, so there wouldn't be much of a growing season.
Yeah, well,
So self-sufficiency would be out the window in a way.
yeah.
Which actually brings me on to a point I wanted to ask you. You know, this thing of cannibalism. Like I thought it would start pretty soon. You know, I thought it would, when people are very, very hungry, they would resort to that fairly
Yeah.
quickly. But in the film, it seems to take a long time, and I don't think we see. There is the sort of sensation that it's happening, but I don't think there's any real vivid image of them eating a
No.
body, is there?
Well, that might be the British sensibility. They're quite in. Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, there it kind of touches on it on the outside, all right. Yeah. I'm trying to think. Like, I mean, in your like if we were in the worst case scenario, what would you do? Like in that movie with the Alive when they crashed into the Andes, would you be one of the people that ate the bodies, or would you be one of the people that try to survive as long as possible?
It's hard to know. It's hard to know. I think survival would eventually kick in. And
Yeah.
it's interesting, actually, that story, you know, Alive. I read the book and how they sold it, because there were some of the passengers that were very reluctant to eat human flesh because it went against their Catholic belief, you know.
Yeah.
And how they sold it to them was they told them that, you know, it was like eating the body of Christ, you know.
Yeah.
And how God, you know, a loving God would wish for them to survive rather than to fast and to die. So
Well,
some people came around. I think there was one woman, she didn't come around to it, and she didn't last very long.
Yeah. It wouldn't really be a religious thing for me. It'd be just, I don't know if I could stomach it. I suppose if you're really hungry, then I mean,
You've probably already eaten lots of human flesh on your travels.
I was just saying I lived in China, so who fucking hell, what am I talking about?
You thought you were getting dog, only to realize.
Hey, I was living in a place in China. This is no lie, and I used to be fucking eating barbecue, you know, every fucking second night on the street. It was lovely, absolutely gorgeous. And then a few months later, I seen, so half the meat in this place was rat meat, you know. So God knows what they're eating in that place. So, hey, the Chinese would be survivors anyway, wouldn't they?
I think so. You know, if it moves, you stick your chopstick into it.
Oh man. Okay, I was just thinking, like, even, I mean, the movie is still pretty good because even it's not so much like with the nuclear war. It's like you could still relate it to the modern age when things get out of hand in society, and you know, as we were saying, the supermarkets are not selling food anymore. They're shutting down. People are fighting. The economic situation gets dire and run out of gas, electricity. So, I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be a nuclear war for that to happen. Societal collapse, you know, and lawlessness.
That's a very good point. Yeah, that's a very good point. Or even just a natural disaster.
Yeah. So, I mean, are we ready for it? And I don't think.
That is another thing as well. You know, when things aren't going well in society, when you have some disaster like that, it's when you'd hope that neighbours would pull together and, you know, there would be a common goal. But in the multicultural Britain of 2022, it would definitely be a free-for-all.
Yeah, well, yeah, in Dublin as well, wouldn't it? No?
Yeah.
There's no bond there. There's no common thread. You know?
I had to listen twice there. I was like, did he really say that? Yeah, no, you're right.
I'm writing the script for the next one, so
yeah. You'll have to approach the Beeb. You'll have to approach the Beeb, or as they call it, Auntie.
But they would have a very different movie today, wouldn't they? I mean, you'd have the, you know, what about Mustafa at the end of the street? Surely someone must think about him. We'll have to help him, yeah? Or he would say about us, you know? No, be man alive. You just fuck that.
All the scientists, all the experts would be Afro-Caribbean.
It'd be a rubber bomb. Bounce off somewhere. Actually, maybe that's okay then. Maybe that's like it'd be like that woman in America who built the bridge, didn't it? It'd be fucking falling down after a few days.
Did you see the video of the? It was somewhere in Africa. They had built a bridge, and they had, I think it was the president of the country. Did you see that?
Yes.
It was like, you know, the ribbon that was to be cut. It was like the ribbon was holding up the bridge.
Oh yes, I see that.
And when they cut the ribbon, the bridge fell.
Yeah. Because Ireland would be the fucking same at the moment, you know. We're such a shithole. We'd be the fucking same at the moment, wouldn't we? Oh man.
I just can't imagine our politicians really doing anything, really. You know, maybe they'd get a flight out of the country.
No, they'd set up a committee. A
10-year plan.
Yeah. Oh man. That's what I was saying there. Yeah, it'd be a very different movie. And then that brings me into the the woke kind of thing, and they'd probably be a bit more sympathetic towards Ruth's story in the movie. I think, you know, she'd probably be she'd come out a bit better in a modern day movie, I think.
Yeah, in a modern movie, you know, she probably would get an abortion.
Yeah.
It wouldn't even be discussed, you know. It would just be like, right, Jimmy's not making enough money, so get an abortion. And actually,
but it'd be centered on the cat, wouldn't it? The cat would be the baby.
Probably, yeah, probably. Have you seen that? Have you seen that in your travels in Asia, where you've got women going around with, you know, cats and puppies in strollers? Have you come across any of that?
Oh.
Right.
I've seen them being barbecued.
Right. Well, that, you know, there's kind of a thing happening where you've got, you know, for example, a young Korean person or something, and a woman, and she goes to the park, and in the stroller is a dog. Oh. And on the bench, you've got an old man who's licking his lips saying, you know, when I was young, we used to eat those things.
Yeah. So I mean, it would be different. It would be complete. It wouldn't. Sure, it wouldn't. Well, it wouldn't be the same movie at all. It'd be like because young people would look at a movie like that if it was made in a modern setting with the modern lay of the land. They wouldn't be able to relate to it. They wouldn't be able to relate to the hardship. They wouldn't be able to relate to, you know. I mean, the 80s was a tough time, really. Even in Ireland, you know. We weren't very rich. I mean, so we could for me, looking at that movie, I could understand it. But I don't know. You know, young people, they wouldn't be able to understand the survival instinct. They wouldn't be able to understand what to do to survive. They'd be, the internet's not working. What do I do now?
Yeah, but just to say, This Drinking Life, watching it, you know, and as someone who, you know, grew up in the 80s and the 90s, the British working class are so similar to the Irish working class of that time. I can't, you know, apart from the accents and that, I didn't really get a sense of a difference there.
Yeah, but I'm talking in relationship to the modern generations that and I wasn't meaning about the difference between Ireland and England that time. I'm starting to relate the difference between today's generation, that they can't relate to the movie because of the hardships of, like, we can relate to it. We grew up in the 80s. We know what it was like. It was hard to get money. But for the younger generation, money is available either from the government or their parents or whatever. You know, life is easy. So they would look at a movie like that and they wouldn't be able to understand it. You know?
Very true, very true. We were told as kids, you know, money doesn't grow on trees. But I think the current Zoomers or whatever, they've kind of grown up.
Fucking believe it, I think.
Absolutely loaded. They've grown up loaded. Even the working class Zoomers have grown up with, you know, considerable amount of pocket money,
free money from the government, yeah.
And all the gadgets, you know, they can get.
Yeah. So I wanted to touch on Ruth then, the reality of. See, this is one thing that kind of does my head in when I see modern movies. You know, these modern movies, Marvel comics and all these superhero things, and have women are able, like, you see one woman and she can do all this kung fu and she can beat about 5 men. It's amazing what the women can do in the movies. But the reality is different, you know. And the reality of women in a situation like the movie or reality of a war, it's not very good for a woman.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. Women are in a terrible position, and in the case of Ruth, she has nobody. And there's even a scene where I don't know if she's already had her baby at this stage, but she's sitting at a campfire with that ragtag group, and they're kind of looking, they're all staring at each other. They're all they look really paranoid, and they're all looking at each other as if they're sizing each other up to eat.
Yes.
And I was watching that, and I was thinking, would a woman and her baby survive, with a group of men who are starving?
No.
You'd like to think that, the men would say, right, this is the future, this is kind of sacred, we can't touch her. But there is that sense that they're all looking at her as well as each other.
Then it goes back to the culture. I mean, I think Irish people, European maybe would not, but then if you look at somewhere like China and the Great March, but in reality, the Great March with Chairman Mao, babies were eaten. People, there was cannibalism. So I mean, as we, like in the modern day world, you don't know your neighbors, they don't know you. So it was a bit of meat maybe. But I was thinking that I said like she prostitutes herself for some rat meat. I mean, Jesus Christ, I mean, there's no feminine hero riding to the rescue here. It's reality bites.
That's a street vendor, isn't it? He hands her out. He kind of counts them out.
Yeah, I can't remember. What was the value of a woman? Was it 2 rats or 3 rats?
I don't know.
But that was part of the movie, and we're only joking like in jest, but it's important because I think that's the way it would go down.
And I think women would get into that role very naturally as well. It's if you want to eat, you're going to have to do things that you wouldn't do, in a modern society, or if you have access to a supermarket, etc. But when you have to eat, morality is going to take a back seat.
And then we were related to the present with all the cooks and the soy boys. Are you expecting a strong man to come out of the fold to lead the way? Where are the strong men? We haven't seen them in the last 2 years, really. We have in parts, but not really though.
Yeah, a lot of them have been neutered in a way. I walked into a bar the other day, and there were about 13 or 14 lads. They're all in their 20s, their 30s, and their 40s, maybe a few in their 50s. And they're all, I think they're on a break from work. They were all kind of builders and tradesmen, and they were all talking in a kind of gruff manner. And I walked in, and they started staring at me, and I stared at them. I stared back at them, and I wasn't just trying to be an asshole or anything, but I just stared back, and I wasn't trying to be aggressive. I stared kind of blankly at them, and I was amazed to see each head look down on the ground. And these are working class men. And I think, what I was thinking, this drinking life, I was thinking every single one of them has rolled up the sleeve,
Yeah.
And it's kind of, whether they get sick or not is debatable. But what isn't debatable is that on some psychological level, they must feel that they're not what they were, and that they're cowards behind it all. When the pressure is on. And there was a lot of pressure on in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Men who you would expect to be men turned into complete pussies.
Yeah. But I think like the last 2 years was a great leveler. Really, it showed who's on message and who's not.
Definitely, yeah. It separated the wheat from the chaff.
Yeah. And in my personal thing, because believe it or not, I'm actually naturally shy. But for me, this has been the last 2 or 3 years. It's given me power. It's given me strength. I mean, when I think of people I know who are all the shots and they're hiding behind a mask and shivering, probably about listening to the news, and you know, it's like, what the fuck, you know? I'm nobody, and these guys are fucking afraid, you know. So it's kind of been empowering as well, you know.
Yeah, it's kind of become a cliche, even though it's it only really came out about a week or two ago. You've got a number of people now saying that the unvaccinated, you've overcome the odds and you've beaten the odds. There was never such psychological pressure as there was, in the last 2 years. You had your job being threatened. You had family members maybe turning against you, your friends turning against you, people in your workplace turning against you. You'd everything turning against you. And in my case, for example, I wasn't allowed into cafes. I wasn't allowed into restaurants. So you're kind of told you're a second-class citizen. And after all that hullabaloo and all that drama, you still didn't roll up your sleeve. You still didn't take the easy way out. So, as I say, it's becoming a kind of cliche, but I think we should just remind ourselves of that those who didn't get vaccinated, you have something that most of the people in the world don't have. And I can't quantify it, but I sure can, qualify it. It's definitely, you just have something that most people don't have. And before this scamdemic, we didn't know. Well, I didn't know. I thought everyone would think the same as me when it would come to this, because it didn't seem believable. But we were sorely mistaken.
So having said that, with the movie, with the same kind of scenario, in rough times, you really don't know who's gonna come out fighting and who's not. And you really can't tell, really. It's a very personal thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and it seems to be, as we've noticed as well during the scamdemic, it's not dependent on class or socioeconomic background. It's just down to the individual in this case, which way you're going to go. Are you going to run around like a headless chicken, or are you going to try and make some sort of plans, even though you might have very little chance of surviving this?
Yeah. So we're set for a nuclear war. We've already been prepped. Probably, maybe.
Yeah, I can crawl under my bed. That's what I can do.
Yeah. So I just want to say, I was being a bit flippant with the mother prostituting herself. It was a very sad scene, actually. But I think the reason why I was flippant is because it's when you compare it to the modern movies, and it's kind of given a false reality to women. The world is not such a great place. It's not so easy that you can. There's a group of men and you can just do this and do that. You have to be careful. You have to be street smart. And I think, in this movie it shows the reality. And for the reality for Ruth, it's not a good thing, but she still survives. And I think she comes out of it with more, like, you respect Ruth. She's a battler.
Yeah, and she's a worker as well, because it shows her later on she's out working on these big open vegetable patches.
Yeah, and she still has a good temperament. She tries her best. She's not. You don't see her really. Okay, she keeps it together. She is actually a feminine hero, but not as how it would be portrayed in a modern movie. Maybe in an old-fashioned way,
Yeah, she's not doing roundhouse kicks.
Yeah, she's not twerking for a living, and
yeah, there's no twerking in this film, guys. So, just in case you thought there might be and you weren't going to watch it, we can guarantee you there's no twerking.
Yeah, I think it kind of, like when she has the child and she raises the child, because she was pregnant through this process, the child, kind of becomes a mute retard. Am I allowed to say retard? Is that an acceptable word?
Well, it's the right word, it's the right word. The child is retarded. Now you could string 5 or 6 words together to try and dance around that fact. But yes, the child is retarded. And
I got kicked off Twitter for using retard. So fuck that, you know.
you should have told him you were speaking French. Because I think retard in French means late.
Yeah, sorry to stop you there. Yeah, you were saying, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that. Yeah, it's true. She has some sort of speech impediment as well. Like there's something wrong, and I think you told me this when we corresponded through email. You said that, or maybe it was in some of your notes. You said that, you know, that even language itself breaks down, and you know, vocabulary is decimated. They're just speaking, you know, it's like they're speaking in tongues. It's almost animalistic, grunt sounds. Yeah.
Yeah. Work. I think in the movie they said work. Giza mean like give it. You know, it's like, but if there was a nuclear thing, it probably would happen like that, because where would they get the education? Where would they, you know, if you're struggling for food all day, you're not going to sit down and teach grammar and, you know.
Yeah, exactly. When the language, you know, when it's no longer a written language, it's going to become a lot more simple. And actually, there is it's kind of weird. It seems weird to me anyway, that, you know, so many years later, and this is Ruth's child, I don't know, she must be what, 13 or 14, and she's with a few other teenagers, and they're in a kind of, it's like a bingo hall or something, or a town hall, and they're watching, it's a kind of real grainy film, and I think it's a TV show, and it's just more or less skeleton, repeat, skeleton, and then there's some other word, and that's kind of it. And they sit there watching it, you know, and you've got an old woman who's mouthing the words, you know, silently. She's repeating the words.
She can remember some words from her past. Yeah, probably. Yeah, so it's like a gang of feral children. So unfortunately, Ruth dies. She has her baby, and when she dies, it's a graphic scene when her kid is. She dies many years after bringing up her kid. I think she dies after a hard day's work or something, and she dies on the field doing a day's work, or just looking, you know, working for probably working for food for a farmer or something. I don't know. And she dies, and the kid is just like, yeah, okay. Her own child that she lived for so long to bring up, she survived through all this nuclear fucking thing, and basically when kid's mother dies, it's just like, yeah, emotionless over her dying mother, you know.
The typical Zoomer, this drinking life. Typical Zoomer, you know.
Yeah.
She was thinking of getting onto OnlyFans as soon as possible. No, it is quite sad, and it means that the daughter doesn't really have that attachment to the mother. Once the mother is no longer moving and speaking, she's no longer important for the child. And you can see it. Like I think she might be on a bed or something in a shed. Yeah, and the daughter's beside her. She's after, you know, she spent the day working in the fields, and as you said, and that's it. And the daughter just walks off then, and she becomes pregnant then. Is she raped?
I think they imply that she was raped. Yeah, she's hanging around with a few lads. And yeah, I think it is implied that she's raped. Yeah, I think she has a fight with some guy. He's trying to take something from her, and she's trying to take it back, and then it ends up. We don't see what happens, but the idea is that either they have consensual sex or he rapes her. No, it's rape.
Okay,
it is implied. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like that would be it's animalistic. We turn into animals. We're regressing. And again, you could tie it in. I mean, you know, that's why this movie is so good, Threads, you know. I mean, you can tie it in with what's been happening the last 2 years. I mean, with the mouth being covered, we can't see each other speaking. And even say like young children now, or young children that had the mask on for the last 2 years, especially in primary school, and even newborns, seeing all these people masked, they have delayed speech. You know, I mean, it's funny.
Yeah, no, it's true that there are a lot of kids who, because seemingly when you're very young, you're watching everyone's lips moving.
Yeah.
And it's very important for acquiring speech. So they didn't really have that in the last number of years. And as you say, I think you've got a lot of speech therapists now. You've got a lot of these people working, trying to help them. Yeah.
Well, as I said, it relates to the movie, like the people are regressing into grunting and Neanderthals, which is not a big leap for the TikTok generation, I guess.
Not really, no, not really.
Okay, sorry.
We're heading that way. We're heading that way without Russia's help.
Well, we're heading into it. You know that movie, Idiocracy, or what was that? You know, like it's like
Idiocracy. Yeah,
Idiocracy. Yeah,
it's a good film. I watched that a few years back. Yeah, it's very funny.
It's a very good movie. It's a very good movie. But so that's basically the end of the movie. Then and then Ruth's daughter becomes pregnant because she was raped. And then, do you want to explain the final scene if you can remember it?
Yeah, I think it's Ruth's daughter, and she's in. It looks like she's in labor, but she has a stillbirth, and she's just holding this bundle of blood in her hands, and she seems confused. It's as if she didn't even know she was pregnant. You know, the way she's kind of she reacts. What did you make of it?
It's like literally no hope, is there? This movie just says, just when you think, okay, maybe her baby will be the future generation, but it's stillborn. It's gone. It's which what they're trying to say is this is what happens. Nuclear war. Everything is gone. There's no hope. No matter how hard you try, like Ruth, she tried for her child. She tried so hard. She kept going through it all. She has her child. Retard. She has a child. Dead. No hope.
Yeah.
It's a family fun movie.
yeah. It's one for all the family, all right. It is quite bleak, and it's almost as if, you know, despite the nanny state, you know, even years later, you still have some sort of semblance of a state, of a government, and it too has no future because the people can no longer reproduce.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, it's all irrelevant then.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So why do you think this film had such a powerful impact when it came out?
Well, I think that was the mood of the 1980s, wasn't it? The whole idea of the Cold War. I remember watching an episode of Only Fools and Horses, and I think they bought a bunker and they put it on a roof or something. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
It's on the roof of the fucking. What do you call it? The apartment block. It was on the roof.
Yeah.
It's like
Mandela. What was it? Mandela
House in Peckham. So like there was this very strong, especially in Britain. I don't really remember it in Ireland. Like we would hear on the news about, you know, the latest problems, you know, with the Soviet Union. I don't remember much of it, to be honest. I was very young, but looking at the shows from the 1980s, it was obviously talked about a lot. And I guess people, you know, if you're watching this on Thisdrinkinglife's channels, or if you're watching it on mine, British people especially should leave comments, those who grew up maybe in the 60s and 70s, and let us know, like, as children, did you have to hide under desks? Was this drilled into you? You know, the way in the last 2 years, certain things have been drilled into the youth across the world.
Yeah. Well, I think it resonates because it's a realistic movie. You know, there's no real special effects. I mean, the acting is pretty good. I mean, it's real people, real reactions. So people could relate to it that bit more, and they could relate to it because it's the story of the family. They have the whole future in front of them, and you know, there's no silliness in the movie. It's a real movie for real people. You know, that's.
I did read before we come on that there was a blooper, and that was that Ruth's daughter has a tooth filling.
Oh God.
And
That
another,
would that
yeah,
that
go
would
ahead.
make me watch the whole movie again just to look out for that.
I remember years ago in a newspaper, you know, when Titanic came out in '97, I remember reading in the newspaper that there was some gaff where you could actually see the cameraman. It was like reflected in the glass or something.
Oh
You
wow.
could see the cameraman.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
but yeah, there's a scene as well. They say that you know, because they wouldn't have had the great CGI back then, and well, not so great CGI. They wouldn't have had the special effects that they have now anyway. And
Yeah.
there's a scene of a cat dying, and in reality, it was a cat under the influence of catnip, and they had just reversed, you know, they had reversed it in time.
Yes, I know. I read that. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. For all the cat lovers, yeah. No need to get upset.
It was just a
But
cat on drugs. That's all.
yeah, I think like what did I say they spent on this movie? It was like what did I say, 200,000 or something?
I think you said 400,000, yeah, pounds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. So it wasn't much, but I mean, and it does stand the test of time, doesn't it?
it does. Yeah, and that's another thing. That's another element. Like back in the '80s and '90s, you would have watched. I'm sure you would have watched David Attenborough documentaries and all that
Yeah,
when you were a young fella. When you were young, I presume you watched BBC documentaries now and then. For example, you get Attenborough. Sometimes the RTE would have them on as well.
yeah, yeah,
So, for example, the Living Planet, Trials of Life, and you believed, you know, you believed. Well, as a child anyway, I believed everything that was in those documentaries because it was science, and you had that, you know, authoritative British voice. And
yeah.
in this film, it seems very much like obviously it's like a documentary, but it's also like a news program. And back then, we tended to believe in the news.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Yeah, people
yes,
must have been, as we said at the very start, people in Britain when they watched this, they must have been just absolutely terrified.
yeah. They probably thought, Jesus, because it is actually made like a documentary, isn't it? I mean, it's not because you have
Yeah,
you have the voiceovers telling us what happened, and it doesn't just tell us what's happening it tells us the economic effects, it tells us the weather effects as a news report or a radio report. It's just so you have that going on in the background, you know.
yeah, and
Um,
you're swamped with statistics as well. You know, so many 100,000 people have died, so many million people have died. You know, it will be another 2 weeks until provisions can be acquired. You're given data all the time.
yeah, which is an interesting theme, really. No, I mean, is that kind of like the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain? Like you have the facts and the figures, and then you're meant to be looking at a route and a progress. So it's a
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of
exactly. Yeah, they give you two sides of it. So it kind of encompasses a very large section of society.
yeah. I just have two more things to touch on, if that's okay. There's some very famous scenes. I don't know if you wanted to go through them. I mean, there's the dead baby. Do you know that scene I'm talking about when
I,
the lady is cradling the dead baby?
I don't remember it. I do remember they showed footage of, you know, various people very haggard looking out on the street.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. She's walking on the street. I think it's not long after. Maybe and she walks on. There's a woman, and she's cradling a baby, and you get to have a look, and the baby's dead. I mean, it's pretty vivid scene. But you know the woman pissing in her pants.
Um, I
See,
can't think of it.
you were
I
trying
must have nodded off. I must have nodded off.
you were trying to go for the weighty teams and all the big. I was looking at all this kind of stuff.
I missed the
The
important
gore,
stuff. No,
the
I missed the
gore, the
important
gore,
stuff.
the gore, the gore. Yeah, well, it is a famous scene. Like when when the alarms go off, immediately you have the alarms going off, and everybody immediately panics, and they're literally running nowhere. You can imagine you're in the center of the town. Where would you run?
Yeah, that's another thing. You know, those sirens. Like, the idea is that, you know, it's to warn everyone so everyone can be careful, but it ends up being a stampede, and lots of people die.
That's what happens in the movie. Yeah, everybody goes crazy. It's like everybody's normal in the street. Bang. It's hell for leather. But where would you run? Like, where would you run if you're in the middle of the town?
Yeah, you'd have to get inside somewhere, I think.
Pub.
You know. order a double Jameson, on the rocks.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll see you in 4 years' time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is the you can't see, like the piddle is coming down her pants, and you see it coming out of her cuff of her trousers, her shoes. So.
Right. Is she running when it happens, or is she just like frozen, like standing there?
I think she's just frozen. I think she doesn't know what's happening.
Right.
And then we already touched on the end of the film with the stillbirth. But I wanted just to say one of the best lines on the movie, and this is one thing I like about British movies, that they always, even these movies are so depressing, and like, Jesus Christ, I mean, it's the end of the world, and there's no get up from it. The English do like to put in little bits of humor into these movies, and I think the best line was when Mr. Kemp was sitting on the toilet having a shit. When everything becomes bright from the detonation of a nuclear bomb. And can you remember his lines?
It's not something like, "Blimey."
It's close enough, bloody hell.
A very poetic ending, for his, to his life. Very poetic.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the typical British, isn't it? They love to put in that kind of humor, toilet humor.
Yeah, there's not a lot of humor in this film, though. I have to. Well, from what I saw, there wasn't a lot. There wasn't a lot going on,
I think that was the only piece. Yeah.
Yeah. I can't think of much else actually in the film.
I'm sure we could find it. I'm sure hidden maybe somewhere.
Yeah, a few gems. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're pretty much we kind of wrap up a bit. So overall, what would be your final assessment of the movie?
I would say it's an apocalyptic movie, but not only apocalyptic, also catastrophic.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
Apocalyptic and catastrophic.
Yeah. I know. It's a very good movie, and it's quite realistic. I know a lot of people will say it's dated, it doesn't look real, but I think if you grew up, for example, in the 80s and the 90s, you would be able to associate with this film, and it would seem a lot more real to you. I think, you said the budget was £400,000, which is really nothing for, the likes of the BBC. And I think it was very well put together. And you do feel for the characters. You do feel for Ruth. She goes through absolute hell. And, she is a survivor. She's one of very few who have survived. And it also reminds us how civilization as we take it is a very fragile thing. And they say you're only 3 meals away from a civil war. And I think should something like this happen, and as we said earlier, it doesn't have to be a nuclear bomb, but should some catastrophe happen in the West, a lot of us, and I include myself, will be found wanting, but there will be a few who will survive because they are born survivors. And I'd like to thank you, Thisdrinkinglife, for inviting me on. I've enjoyed this chat, and I hope we can chat again soon and perhaps review another movie.
Yeah, thank you. No worries. Well, we will survive the nuclear attack anyway, I think, maybe, will we? No.
While you were talking, I was just getting my bug out bag ready.
You be in the wilds of where you are in Spain, and he says, I think they might be eating me here.
they'll be prodding you. You know, they'll be prodding you to see where the juicy parts of you are.
I'd be on a spit roast. Jesus, I'm fucked. Yeah, it's all fun and games, but when the nuclear war happens.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was okay, actually. I think. I guess. I don't know. For my first one, anyway.
No, I think it was good. And yeah, we might get another one in before Christmas. I was going to say next Friday, I think I'm due to do a movie review with Irish Fenian again.
Yeah.
And we're going to do The Field.
Okay. Yeah.
So that should that should be a bit of I don't know. Should be a bit of fun. I think it's an Irish film, but
you could tie it in with taking our land and taking.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. The fact that you work very hard. You work very hard, and it's then taken away from you.